So I'm going to call roll. Mayor Garrett,
Well, I'm here and I am in Lathrup Village, Oakland County, Michigan.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
I am here also in Lathrup Village, Oakland County, Michigan, attending remotely.
Councilmember Ferguson,
I'm here, Lathrop Village, Oakland County, Michigan.
Councilmember Siddiqui, and Councilmember Stallings.
They'll probably jump in soon. I just wanted to be able to
Okay.
start this. Thank you.
You're welcome, and you have a quorum.
One thing that I will say about our meeting today is that this is a study session, so there will be no actions taken on any of the topics that we're talking about. Also, there will be opportunities for public comment. It will be limited to 3 minutes, and you will have to state your address and information when you speak. So, first up, I think we're going to switch things around, or do you want to leave it as is, or are we?
Well, let's if you don't mind, let's still put the infrastructure stuff at the end just to give Salim, and Salim saw a bunch of this because he was at the meeting last Wednesday. We had a very long meeting. He was there at least for the first hour and a half, and Donna's not here yet either, so at least we'll give them a chance to join in.
No problem. So then we're going to start with the marijuana licensing and application process. I believe that will be our city attorney that will start that.
I think that's probably me. So just to give a quick update that Jill and I have completed a draft version of the zoning ordinance. So that's something that I believe we'll see at the, we'll see it next week at our joint meeting, the 30th. So that's really all I have for that for tonight.
Wow, that was difficult. Does anybody have any questions or questions, concerns, statements? And Donna is here. She needs to be put into the actual Zoom meeting, please. Next up is going to be the House in the Woods update.
There is not really any update other than to say that the last instruction was to do the RFP for the realtor, and I have not had an opportunity to do that. And if I could ask, since I see that Mr. Redstone is here, could we move the police department expansion study up so he doesn't have to stay for the entire infrastructure conversation?
Absolutely, because it's next.
Okay.
If you don't have anything about the House in the Woods, then I think that's going to be next. But before we jump off of the House in the Woods, so when you're saying that there's no update on that, it's where we did put something, we put RFP out or no?
We haven't yet. I haven't drafted it yet.
Okay.
Bless you.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll go to the police department expansion study update.
Mayor and council members, if you recall at your last session, we provided the presentation of the proposal from Redstone Architects relative to the, I guess, the redevelopment of the lower level to accommodate the police department expansion. Their initial quote indicated part one was programming, part two was for the block diagrams and conceptual floor plans, and then the part three was the building condition assessments. And you had some additional questions in regards to if we were doing all three parts or certain portions. I included in your packet the response from Mr. Redstone, who is with you here today, indicating that the initial work would include parts 1 and 2. And also, I'm pleased to say, as part of our conversation, he was willing to reduce some of his fees for his services, so that reduced the cost for the part 1 and 2 from 640 to an even 9,000. But Mr. Redstone is here if you had any specific questions.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Good evening. Might be an easy crowd tonight.
Good evening.
Do you want me to give a little explanation of the process?
Yes, well, if you would, please.
Sure. The proposal was done in August, and it was, had a meeting with Chris and the chief, Chris Clow, and the chief of police, and Scott. And the thought is to develop the space needs assessment to really identify what the village police department needs to have in terms of having a safe, secure facility that protects the officers, gives the sworn officers a place where they can change, a break area where the prisoners can be separated out as they're coming in to be interviewed before going to the county jail, and all of this done in a safe, secure setting. And we looked at I had a tour of the main level, which is very congested, the lower level, which is primarily open right now. And I felt that we could easily develop that space needs assessment by interviewing the members of the department and the city staff, and coming to a consensus as to a needs, and then developing block diagrams to show you the adjacencies and workflow to show you how safe and secure the officers will be, and then develop a quick conceptual floor plan showing some furniture and layouts, so to confirm that the spaces we are providing and the concepts we're providing meet with your approval. And I developed a spreadsheet showing you the hours for that phases 1 and 2. And then I suggested that really, in order to get and that would accompany, I'd have one of a contractor, O'Brien Construction, who has done police facilities with me, have them develop with me a initial cost projection to do the renovation. Part 3 was the building condition analysis. And to really get a good handle on what costs would be before you go out for a bond issue, we really need to know the condition of the support systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, the IT system for the whole building. We would need to know what the environmental condition of the building is. And so I put that into a part 3, and most of that is consulting engineers to come in and do an analysis of those systems. And that was a separate part. I don't think you need that, and I don't need that to give you a ballpark estimate for phases 1 and 2 as to the layout and the square footage and the approximate cost per square foot. But I think my caution is, before we go to the voters with any sort of method of proposed for funding it, that we do that step 3, which is the investigation of the various systems. Your building's what, 65 years old? So, in mid 60s, late 60s.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So it certainly would be prudent. And then I suggested also that regardless of what you do in the building, based on my experience, you really need to have some sort of environmental assessment of the building, whether you're working on the police side or other parts of the building to renovate. There's undoubtedly asbestos in there, and you really have to know what you're doing before you can get contractors are going to require that no matter where you are in the building for renovation. So I guess that's my brief explanation of the fees, of the process, the steps. It's a tried and proven process. The more people we get involved to discuss the needs, and the better the consensus. And this would include the DDA. I noticed you had a representative of the Development Authority as well, because what we do for the police department is going to impact the desirability, again, of the village and the city to attract more development.
Yeah, I think the big question that we had, at least at our last meeting, was whether or not we could, have pause between part 2 and part 3 so that we could review the results before moving on to a part 3. And I think you answered that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll have a good ballpark. You'll know what arena you're in. You know, each of the area underneath the police department and the main floor, I think, is somewhere around 13 to 1,500 square feet. So we're talking maybe 3,000 square feet if you went up and down below and then maybe expanded out. My plus or minus square footage right now is 3,000 square feet to 3,200 square feet in terms of what we're looking at to accommodate the police department.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
So if this addresses your questions and you want to proceed, I can have the contract on the December council agenda for your approval.
You're not just
Yeah.
asking me, right? You're asking everybody, correct?
Yeah, no, I said thank you. I didn't know I was still muted. I was saying thank you.
Yeah, that sounds good, Cheryl.
Yeah.
I
sounds
agree.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it.
okay, would you want me there at that meeting?
That's probably a good idea.
Okay, it's always a pleasure. It's so easy with Zoom also and safe. So,
It is, you can be in 3 meetings at once.
right.
Doesn't always work, but you know.
If
All
you
right.
have the bandwidth. All right. Thank you, Mr. Redstone.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. Have a good rest of the meeting, okay?
Okay.
Oh, you have a good rest of your day.
Next meeting.
Thank you.
And stay safe.
You too. Thanks.
Next up is contract updates. I'm assuming that would be Cheryl.
Yes, you have included in your packet the updates for the contracts. One correction I want to note that I was able to contact IT Right because that didn't seem correct to me when I called them. The contract from last year was actually a 3-year contract, and we were able to negotiate that because they froze their rates for that period of time. And we'd already discussed in regards to putting together an RFP with Councilmember Ferguson and Siddiqui and staff relative to the auditors.
Okay, did you I know this might not have to do with contracts in a way, but have you put together a description or job description or gotten in contact with the previous code enforcer?
We've been in the communications and I'm in the process of finalizing that as soon as we officially approve the full-time position. The DDA did approve their portion of it on Friday. So once council does that, we'll go forward immediately.
Would that position, I was going to ask that, would that position end up being a full-time code enforcement position? I know you had talked earlier about doing some assistant administrative work, or were you going to have a full-time equivalent for code enforcement, but you might split up the roles?
The sense that I received from our previous conversations was that you really wanted him to be that person to be more devoted to code enforcement. So they may have a small element of special projects, but that'll be their primary responsibility.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Can we get an electronic copy of that contracts document? And the way it came out, at least on my printout, it was all jacked basically. So
Okay.
I couldn't see the name of the contract holder, so it'd be good to have it electronically.
I'll just send you it as a Excel file, which is what it is, and it'll be easier for you probably. Okay.
So, and regarding that, we put a 90-day moratorium, not moratorium, but we asked for 90 days for that out the DDA, right, Susie?
Totally. No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that. My computer decided to die on me real quick.
Regarding for the full-time code enforcer, we put a 90-day.
No, no, code enforcement, the DDA said, yes, that there was a consensus that they were intending to split the difference to make it full-time. The 90-day extension was for
Okay, I got it. Yep.
the DDA Parks and Rec specialist.
Gotcha. Yep. It's everything came running back together at one time. So never mind.
No worries.
Thank you. Only reason that I asked that is because I just think that we really need to get focused back on the code enforcement. Where I'm watching something and I see the car that drives by and I see them never stop ever. So it's interesting to watch. That it is something that is very obvious and or just to be overlooked. So I think that we need to have a full time. Not that I didn't think that we needed one before, but I think that we really need to focus on having a full time code enforcer. Just reiterating.
And I'm not sure which vehicle you see. If you're seeing the city vehicle, they may be out for something specific as opposed to assessing an area. And then the other vehicle would be the one utilized currently by the contractor.
So I see the white truck with the what is that called? It's a Ford that has the one that Rami was using.
Right. So that's a shared vehicle. So it may be out on something specific as a follow-up, especially if it's something we received on the C-Click Fix, as opposed to just cruising. But I understand your point that you want that to be done on a regular basis.
Yeah, and well, so if they're out cruising for something else and they
Mhm.
that is not within code, then they're not gonna do that because they're not out there looking for stuff that needs to be reported.
Would you say the last part it faded out?
Yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't just have the magnetic emblem on there at all times.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that even I mean that's how I know that it's the city truck because the emblem.
Mhm.
But what you were saying that maybe they're not out to look for code issues that they might be out as a follow up. And my question was, so that means that if they do see something out of code, they're not gonna take care of that. You know what I mean?
I think what she was saying was that the truck is used for other purposes other than code enforcement.
She also said that there was something for a follow up, so that's what I was asking on that one for the follow up to something.
I guess if I'm understanding your question correctly, the staff person may be out to follow up on something specific, whether it's following up on a license request, following up on a complaint, following up on the status of something. So they're doing that to come back and do the paperwork associated with it. So at that moment, they may not be doing an overall surveillance of the community. So they wouldn't be slow. Right.
I didn't hear what you said, Bruce, because she was.
So they're also doing non-code enforcement work.
Well, it could be code enforcement, zoning, planning, any of that. Yes.
Yeah, but that still was my question, is that I know that even though I'm going to work to do something else and I see something that's out of whack, which something is out of whack over here, they don't report that. That's what my question is.
I guess I'd have to know the specifics. I know the ones you brought to my attention, they followed up on, so. Okay.
But we'll talk later. Just,
All
I
right.
mean, so, yeah,
Okay.
that's why we definitely need to work on a full time, but.
All right.
I think that's it. So was there anything else that's on there? No. So go to the infrastructure committee update.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so the last few weeks have been full-time, go like crazy infrastructure type stuff. So this is going to be somewhat of a lengthy conversation. I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but basically on two fronts. First, I want to give you guys an update on what's going on now that we're kind of moving into the more implementation phase of the roads and ditches, and then there's a whole host of other infrastructure needs that we've kind of been delaying talking about, because we've been busy with roads and ditches, and coincidentally, they're also firing up from a needs basis. So there's a lot to update, new stuff to update on new infrastructure fronts. So things like water, sewer, water meters, things like that. So let me start off with and I also mentioned we did have a very long 2.5-hour meeting, very productive meeting, but very long last Wednesday, where we were able to get through a lot of this stuff. So starting out with the roads and the ditches, Scott Ringler and I have met several times. We've been driving the streets, and basically, as you remember, there's 11 miles of eligible road for construction over the next 3 years, and we're trying to determine what roads to recommend for season 1, basically starting next spring. And the issue that we have, at least with with the first construction season, is that we're already behind the 8 ball, because we couldn't do anything until the election took place, and so we've got design work to do, as well as potential special assessment district development, which is a lengthy, time-consuming process. So what Scott and I have talked about, and then kind of confirmed with the committee, is what we decided to do is for year 1. We want to focus on streets that need to be repaired in that 11-mile gamut, that either have no ditches, the ditches are currently in good shape, or only need minor repair. So basically limiting the amount of ditch work that we're going to do in the first year. And then also we want to include streets that need repaired where we know the residents are cooperative or desiring ditch improvements, namely Cambridge, basically. We know that they are gung-ho to get their ditches corrected and fixed. And we did that because we want to have at least one SAD that we do in year 1, because in year 2 and year 3, we're going to have we're going to have more SADs. And so we felt that it made sense to cut our teeth on the process and do it with a low number of SADs, i.e. pretty much one in the first year. The one thing that was really good news as we drove the streets, we were kind of pleasantly surprised that the streets, in terms of the ditches, did not seem to be as bad as we thought they were going to be. Scott Ringler, our engineer, said on several occasions, these really aren't as bad as I expected them to be. So that's good news. And with the streets that we've looked at for year 1, in a lot of instances, what we'll be able to do is do the repairs. We think we'll be able to do the repairs, and this is all based on preliminary reviews. But we think we'll be able to do a lot of the ditching work, not have to use SADs, but rather being able to do things via code enforcement. So, for example, one street that we drove that we're thinking about for year 1, the only issues that we saw on that street were 2 residents who have driveway culverts that have heaved. So they've come out of the driveway upward so that the water can't get through them. And so that's something that we could very easily address via code enforcement and not have to go through a very complex, time-consuming, SAD process to do. And then in a couple other instances, there were some streets that had very minor work that needed to be done. And what Scott's recommendation and the committee agreed was that, if it's a very, very low dollar amount, like maybe doing just a little bit of simple grading, we'll just roll that into the construction costs for the streets rather than, go through again the expense, the legal expense, the admin expense, and the filing costs associated with an SAD. And let's see what else here. Yeah, so basically what we did is we targeted, we're targeting to do 1.5 miles in the spring, summer of 2021. In the packet, you received a map that had the streets that we're looking at for year 1, as both in terms of a map as well as a spreadsheet. And that totals up to about 2.25 miles. And so we're going to do the design work on 2.25 miles. So that if we run into any situation where one of the roads can't be done for whatever reason, or it requires an SAD and the residents reject it, we're ready to go with additional miles. So we don't lose anything by doing that, because it just if we do 1.5 miles and we don't do the remaining what is that, 0.7 miles or whatever, 3/4 of a mile. We already have a leg up for next year for those roads. We did decide to include, Santa Barbara. Again, because as I think most everybody knows, we were supposed to do Santa Barbara this year, but due to COVID and revenue issues, we didn't do a road project this summer. And we budgeted $225,000 for this current fiscal year now to do that work, but it's going to be done as part of the road millage. It was an eligible road, and the fact that the design work of Santa Barbara is about 80% complete really helps us out a lot, because again, we have this compacted design time frame that we have to work with, because we have such a late start. So that was an ideal one to include. Now, one thing, actually, let me pause before I go on just to see if anybody has any questions or comments so far. Everything makes sense so far?
Yeah, makes sense. Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the culverts that you feel that will have minimum work done, did you guys actually look at the openings of those culverts to see if they were either clogged or may need slight grading? Or
that kind of stuff is if they're clogged or they're bent, that's minimal. That's we're looking more towards structural types of things.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So the one other thing here about roads, about Santa Barbara is, so there's 450 feet of concrete that's north of La Crosse. I see you smiling, which was in horrible shape already, and with the water main project, got beaten up even worse. And the city engineer is strongly recommending that 450 feet be repaired this year, along with the rest of Santa Barbara, to minimize disruption, as well as have a contiguous stretch of new road. And it's horrendous road. So one of the things that Cheryl and I have talked about, and this is something that we'll have to go through, we'll have to decide, as a council, and it may result in some budget amendments in January, but what we've asked is that the 450 feet of concrete, be paid for by the city out of the local road fund, as opposed to using the new millage funds. The committee has a pretty big problem using those funds for that 450 feet, because we were very specific in the recommendation, as well as all of our description of the project and the proposal, that we weren't doing any concrete as part of this proposal, and that we were only doing eligible streets, and that 450 feet is not an eligible street, and it is concrete. So we would immediately be going back on our word if we use millage funds for that. Now, we did have $225,000 budgeted for road work this summer that we're not going to have a traditional road program. So a lot of that money will be able to be reclaimed, to use for other purposes. So, for example, we do the $150,000 transfer from the general fund to local roads. We probably won't need to do all or any of that. But what we are asking for, and talk to Cheryl about, is using money from that $225,000 that was already budgeted for Santa Barbara in the first place to do that 450 feet of concrete at a cost of roughly about $120,000. So we still would be spending some money on roads this summer, but nowhere near the $225,000. So that's something we'll need to talk about. And then in terms of us as a council, we will need to issue a bond authoring resolution. There's some timing issues with that in terms of, getting dollars in hand and getting the construction done, within 3 years and so forth. So we're looking at doing that at the March 15th meeting. So we'll issue that resolution then. I guess the only other.
Could you repeat that, please? You're going to issue.
Yeah. So the bond that we just approved the millage, which was for a $5.845 million bond, And in order I mean, there's a whole set of steps that we have to go through to actually get that money. But from a council, the one council step is that we have to issue a bond authorizing resolution. So basically a resolution that authorizes us to, take those bond monies or get that bond money. And we'll be doing that in March on the March meeting, March 15th.
So the portion of your, the need to use the funds that's in the budget for this year, that's good. It's good with, Pam and the city. It's clear. I mean, we're not changing the budget or anything. It's okay, right?
No, I mean, any changes that we'll do to the budget are going to be good changes,
to us.
for lack of a better word, because we won't, there will be money that we won't be spending on the roads this summer that we already budgeted for.
Okay.
And so we can do a budget amendment to, for example, not do that $150,000 transfer. And now we have $150,000 that we can put towards other things
those fixes. Okay, thank you.
Right. So, I mean, I guess one thing I would be interested in hearing is from the other council members what you guys think about, using that $120,000, that money to do that piece of concrete that's been recommended to us from our city engineer this summer. Are there any objections?
No objections. It makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good.
It makes sense.
All right, and I guess the other thing that I'd like to ask from my peers here is, we'll put together at some point, we'll be giving a formal recommendation of the roads, because as you remember from the proposal, the committee was supposed to recommend the specific roads to council. But we need to, and by we I mean Scott and his engineering team and his surveyors need to get going immediately or near immediately to begin the survey work, because in the words of our city engineer, if we get stuck under snow, this project is screwed, because they need to get the surveys going. So I've given you a list of the roads that we're proposing, the eligible roads, the roughly 2 miles of eligible road, 2.25 miles of eligible road for this construction season. So if you guys could give that a look in the next day or so, maybe by end of day on Wednesday, and let me know if you have any comments or suggestions about that. Like if anybody has any, adamant, no, we can't do that road because of, or yes, we definitely have to do this road on the list. Let's make it a top priority, that kind of thing. Because what I'd like to do, with Cheryl's approval is, kind of give Scott the okay to start, we say, hey, we've got a good list, Scott's approved it, the committee's kind of looked over it, council's kind of okay with it, so that Cheryl can have Scott, give him the okay to kind of start doing some of the survey work that we need to get done. So could you guys do that by maybe Wednesday? Email me and Cheryl with any comments that you have, if any.
Yes.
Okay.
I sure will.
Okay. Anything else anybody has on the roads and the ditches? Okay, so here's a lot of new stuff then. So obviously, our initial goal as the infrastructure committee was to spend the first year working on roads, ditches, and sidewalks, but obviously that took a year longer than we had hoped because our first attempt was voted down by the voters. But we also have a lot of other infrastructure needs that we needed to start addressing, and we started looking at them, and as I said earlier, kind of coincidentally, some of these things have become pressing needs as we started to have the resources to look at them. So we've been looking at a lot of things, and basically there are some things that I want to go over here, some systems that we need to start making some, in some cases, pretty immediate investments in, and then others, we need to start making some short-term investments. So I want to talk about, so the committee has already talked about this. We're kind of moving towards making a recommendation, but again, I wanted to update you and get your feedback before that process, works its way through full. So the first area I want to kind of bring up is lead. So, everybody knows lead's an issue, especially since Flint. But there are some regulations that we have to start adhering to and start planning for. So starting in 2021, the city is required to replace at a minimum 5% of its lead service lines annually for the next 20 years. So basically, we're required to do a minimum of 5% every year for 20 years until all the lead lines are replaced. So obviously, that requires identifying the lead lines, and by 2025, we're required to identify all the lead and galvanized water leads in the city. And while that sounds like an easy thing, that's a pretty big project. What has to happen to do that is we have to, if the water stop boxes that are on your lawn near the sidewalk that's used to turn the water on and off to the house.
Yep.
Basically, what has to happen is the material, the pipe material, has to be reviewed for 18 inches on each side of that stop box, and that pipe is buried 5 feet down. So essentially, what has to happen is you have to dig a 5-foot trench down on both sides to inspect that pipe and determine whether or not it's lead. So that's not a cheap process. Our DPW actually has quoted a price that's much lower than market at about $550 per stop box. And then the other recommendation from our city engineer, which in my opinion makes total sense, is that while we're doing that, we should be replacing the stop boxes, because the stop boxes are 75 to 100 years old, and in a lot of cases don't work or are very difficult to get the water to turn off when we need it. I know I had some plumbing work done, and we had to get the city out because the plumber couldn't get the stop box to work. So,
So Bruce, that's sorry. So
Right.
that's one stop box per house, right? Every house has one.
Correct. And the cost for replacing the stop box is about $75. So essentially, what we would be looking at is about $625 per stop box, at about $1,600 homes plus administration. We're looking at about $1.1 million to do that project, and that's a project that we really have no choice on, because we are mandated to have those identifications done by 2025. We are, Cheryl and myself and Scott have a meeting tomorrow to talk about lead and water meters. We are talking about possibly doing what some other cities have done, which is a self-identification process where residents would basically go in their basement and follow a set of steps to help us identify what material they might have, because if somebody can self-identify as lead, essentially that saves us $550 of digging up their front lawn. If we know it's lead, why dig it up? So we'll talk about that. And then the other thing, which I think everybody knows, is that in the instances where we do find lead, we as a city are responsible for replacing that line at a cost of roughly about $3,000 to $4,000 per line. So that's money that we have to have available to be able to do that as well. As of right now, we only know of 4 lead lines. We will probably get more, but we're hopeful that we will not have a lot of those. So that's the lead issue. Any questions on that? Ian, I think you're talking, but you're on mute.
Sorry, I had a little buffer issue. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that line going into the house, how far in is the city responsible for, or is there a shared cost there for the resident?
City is responsible. I'm blanking. Wait a minute. Up to the stop box.
Meter.
And then right, and then the line goes from the stop box to the meter, but we would be responsible for replacing that from the stop box to the meter.
Okay, and what if the meter? I mean, I'm referring to, the inaccuracy of the meter that we talked about last week. What if the meter was going bad? Are we, as a city, responsible for that?
That's the
You're
next
getting
topic.
to that. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to kind of get that clear. Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, to the next area, water meters. Good lead in, Ian. So as you guys know, because we talked about it last time, you know, our water loss is up to about 40%. And as we talked about last time, we suspect that that's largely due to the water meters, because as they go bad, their reading becomes less accurate. So, you know, we talked a little bit about doing a water meter replacement program. I did look into, you know, some pricing on that. So basically, we're talking about $270 per meter to replace a 5/8 inch meter. With installation, you know, we're basically talking for 1,750 hookups. We're talking about $470,000 to do that. One of the things that Cheryl and Scott and myself have been talking about is before we embark on, you know, replacing 1,700+ meters, let's see if we can, you know, at least verify the fact that the meters are the problem. And so one of the things that we're looking into is doing a kind of like a mini testing project. And this is something, again, that Cheryl and Scott and I are going to talk more about tomorrow. But, you know, take maybe 10 meters, you know, 10 old meters that are, you know, 15, 20, 25 years old, and replace those meters so that the residents, I mean, we're going to need to replace the meters anyways, more than likely. And you don't want to keep those residents without water while we're using their meter. And then send those meters out for testing. The testing is only about $25 a meter, so you're talking about $250 to test, and then you're talking about $2,700 to replace the meters for those residents. So we're looking at about a $3,000 potential project to, you know, kind of verify that this is the issue. That could give us at least a little bit of information. You know, if it comes back that all those meters are spot on, then, you know, then maybe we have to rethink about replacing all the meters and look for a different issue. But from everybody we've talked to, it sounds like, you know, this is a common problem with the meters, where the older they get, the more inaccurate they get, and you start getting a lot of water loss like we're getting. So the longer we wait, you know, the more we lose. So for example, you know, we're anticipating using about 22,500 cubic feet, 22,550 units of 1,000 cubic feet. That's how much we're planning on billing out to residents. But, you know, at a 40% water loss rate, that means that we're actually paying for, as a city, about 37,560 units. So that's a lot of units that we're paying for. So this particular project will essentially pay for itself. You know, if this is indeed the problem, if we drop the water rate down to the water loss rate down to about 20%, you know, which is probably as good as we're going to get with an old system. You know, in a few years, this will pay for itself. Not only because we're not paying for water that we're not billing, but also we're actually billing for that water and getting money for it. So it's kind of a double positive. But again, that's something that we need to consider doing again sooner rather than later, because the longer we wait, the more money we lose. So questions on water meters?
Yeah, I agree with the approach. Just a quick observation. So you guys are coming up with a program where we need to ask a resident or residents to visually identify their line, right?
Talking about it, we haven't gotten past the talking stage. Scott shared with us what Ferndale did. Okay. I actually went down to my basement and followed the process. It was really easy. So it would be a good thing.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe we can start with council. I mean, I'm not saying everybody should volunteer, but I'm willing to volunteer if you want me to, you know, go through that process.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how we look for volunteers, but
okay.
You know.
And we're working with Scott's firm to have the information aligned with the GIS map so that we have that tracking mechanism associated with gathering that data.
Okay, and the other part regarding there. So, you know, I'm willing to donate $25 if that's, you know, something that we can also consider. I'm sure a lot of residents probably would do that too. So, I'm willing to volunteer myself. If you need me to pay for my meter to do that, I have no problems with that.
We'll figure that out and get back to you. Get back to
Okay,
council.
no problem.
All right, the next area is our sewer system, and as you guys have heard me say in the past, the sewer system is in fairly good shape because we have over the last 20 years invested quite a sum of money into it. This summer, as you guys know, because we all approved it, we approved 30,000 linear feet of inspection, television inspection, which has been going on for I think about a month now, and has a little bit more of the project to go. But Scott was basically estimating that based on what we find from this inspection, that we're expecting about $120,000 of cost per year for the next 3 to 4 years to do, grout repairs and pipe repairs and so forth, maybe some cure in place piping based on what we find. So again, that's something that we have to, have money aside for. And then water mains. So again, we all know that our system is almost 100 years old, older than that in some places. We have the Santa Barbara project finishing up this year, and as you know, we're going to have street repairs coming up over this summer, next summer, and the summer after. And so what Scott has done is he's kind of coordinated the eligible streets list with the most pressing water mains that need to be done. Because again, as you know, we don't want to put down a brand new road and then have to turn around and replace the water main and tear that street up again 2 or 3 years later. So there are 5 stretches of water main that he's suggesting that we replace. One's on Golden Gate, one's on Wiltshire, one's on Bloomfield, one's on Santa Rosa, and one's on Glenwood, for a total of $1.36 million. So again, now is the time to replace that water pipe while the water mains while the streets are going to be torn up over the next 3 years. So that's money that we need to come up with. And then the last few are quick. Our fire hydrants, again, are most of, I think 65% of them were installed prior to 1930. So those are all coming on 100 years old. And a lot of them are not in good shape. And so based on Scott's work, we're estimating that 120 of them, we have 175 of them now, 120 of them need to be either refurbished or replaced at an average cost of about $4,500 each. So again, you're talking a project of $545,000, which is they're definitely somewhat of a safety issue in their current condition. So that's something that we need to look at replacing. Another major issue that we have are this stuff just gets sexier and sexier the more I talk about it. Our gate valves. So gate valves are the big valves that are used to turn off the water mains. So when we have a water main break, you got to turn the water off so that they can repair it. Yeah. The problem that we have is we have 250 of these gate valves. Again, over 60% of them were installed before 1930, and most of those don't work. So one of the issues that I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them don't work. And one of the big issues that we have is whenever we have water main breaks, we have to fix the water mains under pressure. So in other words, we can't turn the water off. So we lose, you think about that, you've got an 8 or a 12-inch pipe that's just gushing water for hours. So that's part of our water loss that we have to pay for as a city. And the actual repair itself is a lot more expensive because it takes longer and it's harder to do because they're trying to do it while water is gushing in all over the place. So those are about just under $6,000 a piece to replace. The estimate is that we need to replace about 162 of them. So you're talking a cost of about $960,000 there. And then lastly, we have the tank. Cheryl, is it Eagle that's
yeah.
making the repair, telling us we need to make the repairs?
As part of the ACO.
Yeah, the ACO. Okay. Yeah. So we've got about $500,000 in tank repairs that we need to do. And so obviously this is a lot of money that we're talking about. And so one of the things that we had a lengthy discussion about is how to pay for all this at our last meeting. We had our bond agents there. We had our bond attorney there for some advice on how we could approach this. And it's actually not too bad, which is a good thing. Thanks to Pam and other Cheryl and other previous city administrations, they've been good at saving some of our capital funds from the sewer and water, so we do have a balance built up, which does help. So if you grab the spreadsheet that I sent you, I know Cheryl sent out an updated copy. I had some discussions with Scott this afternoon, and we updated some of these numbers. And I think based on what I was just seeing as I was talking, I think I got to do a couple other minor updates. But in terms of how we go about this, yeah, so if you look at the spreadsheet, in terms of our current assets, we have in the account roughly about $3.8 million right now. So that money is money that we've saved up over the years. In the water rate, there's multiple components that go into our water and sewer rate, and one of those components is a component for capital improvements. And so we've been banking that up, and it's roughly about $3.8 million right now. And so we wanted to be able to take money from that, uh-oh, something just happened. Oh, thanks, Cheryl.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, scroll up to the top, please. Other way. Well, while she's doing that, I'll just keep talking.
Scroll.
Yeah, so one of the conversations that we had with our bond agents was how much money, and with Pam, was how much money could we use out of that fund? And first off, there's a base minimum that we really need to keep in that account, which is actually fairly low. It's only roughly about $450,000. But we also need to have money in there for any kind of emergencies. We do have other funds that can be used in emergencies, but it would be good to have some money in there in case some type of emergency does flare up. And then most importantly, what our bond attorney told us is that we need to keep a substantial balance in there to keep our bond rating up, so that our bond rating is low. And if we draw that fund down to say, so there's only, $500,000 left in that, the bond agencies are going to look at us and they're going to say, well, we don't have a lot of assets on hand, so we're a much higher risk. And we would end up with a higher rate. So they recommended that we keep half that money in the fund. And so what I'm proposing is that we leave about $1.9 million in there and take out roughly about $1.9 million that we would have available to use for some of these projects. Below that, you'll see how much money that we're raising per year from that capital component of the water rate. So again, we're expecting to sell about 22.5 million cubic feet. At that rate, we pull in roughly about $210,000 a year to put towards capital improvements or to pay off capital improvement debt. And so that's our assets. Now, in terms of all of these costs that we just talked about, you can see that they all total up to about $6.3 million, or maybe just closer to $6.4 million. You have to add in bond finance costs into that. And then, we wouldn't have, if we did a capital improvement bond, which I'll talk about here in a second, we wouldn't need the $1.18 million of that, because we would be able to pay for that out of our water and sewer fund. So essentially what we would need would be a $4.6 million capital improvement bond to pay for all of this work. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about the capital improvement bond in a second, once I get through the numbers here. And so essentially, to get a $4.6 million bond like that, that's going to cost us $300,000 a year for 20 years to pay that bond off. And what we have available right now is $208,000 per year from the current capital component of the water rate. So essentially what that tells us is we're about $90,000 short to pay off this capital bond. And so one of the things that we talked about proposing was doing a slight water rate increase in the capital component to make up for that shortfall. And so essentially what we're proposing is that for the first 400, so every resident, every hookup in the city gets charged a minimum of 400 cubic feet every year. If you use no water whatsoever, you're still going to get charged for 400 cubic feet. And that happens every month. That's the monthly minimum. And so what we're proposing is that first 400 cubic feet for everybody get hit with a slightly higher capital component rate. And so essentially what you'll see is in order to get that $91,805 that we would need to pay off the bond, we would essentially have to raise the water bill for all residents by roughly a little bit over $4 per month. So you're talking about $50 per year, which actually is, quite a bargain to think about the fact that you're getting $6.4 million worth of improvements for $50 a year. So this would all be done via a capital improvement bond, and got quite a lesson on capital improvement bonds last Wednesday. But basically, it's kind of the preferred method for having to do a lot of these. Oh, you know what? I want to point out one line item on here that I forgot about. In the estimated project costs, I have $947,000 there as kind of a plug factor for lead abatement and ditching. So, we have no way of estimating how much, how many, I said earlier we have 4 service lines that we know of right now that are lead and need to be replaced, but we don't have any way of estimating how many we're going to end up with. Scott's gut feeling is he doesn't feel like it's going to be too many, but we have to, if we do find them, we have to have the money to replace them. And so what we talked about was leaving about $500,000. We don't think we'll need anywhere near that much, but at $3,000 to $4,000 a piece, 100 of them would be $300,000. So it gives us probably the ability to do a little bit shy of 200 replacements if we need to. Again, he doesn't think we'll have that many, but again, we have to have money available to do that. And then the ditching piece in there is, we remember with the special assessments, the residents have 10 years to pay back their ditch special assessments. But we've got to pay for that work up front. So we have to come up with money somehow to pay for those ditch improvements that the residents are going to reimburse us on over 10 years. So the other $500,000 in that line item was the front money for ditching. Okay. So the nice thing, this is what reminded me, was this kind of the first statement about the capital improvement bond. The nice thing about a capital improvement bond is that it allows for a wide variety of projects, which include all of these different projects that we've talked about. They can all be financed through one capital bond. So we don't have to go out for a separate bond for sewer, a separate one for water, a separate one for ditching, like we would have to do if we use revenue bonds or state revolving bonds. We can do it all under one roof, so to speak. It's also a very flexible solution. So, for example, I said that with the sewer lines, we're expecting 3 to 4 years at $120,000, based on what we find in the televising that we're doing right now. Let's say we only need to do 2 years of televising, so $240,000. That remaining $240,000 that we talked about, that can be put towards any other project. It's not earmarked specifically for that particular project. So it can be it can be very flexible in terms of how we move the dollars around to deal with our needs. And then the payback can be from a variety of sources. So we talked about, the majority of these expenses are water and sewer related. So I think the majority of the payback would be through the capital fund in the water rate. But the SADs, so if my ditch is one that gets repaired and I'm paying it off for 10 years, every time I pay that money then can get put towards paying off the debt for this particular capital improvement loan. If we have extra general fund money in a given year, we could put it towards there. So it's the money doesn't have to come from a single source. So it's flexible as well in terms of how we pay it back. Yeah, we don't have to, as I said, we don't have to identify specific projects, just an estimated dollar amount. And the other thing is that's important, it doesn't commit us to using the money. So if we say we want $4.6 million, you know, we can do multiple issues over time. So, you know, for this year, maybe we only need $1 million. For next year, we need $2 million. And then we find out, all right, we're all done. These other projects didn't need to happen. We haven't taken that money out yet. So we can do multiple issues. It doesn't commit us to actually using the money. It's very, very similar to how the bond language or the ballot initiative language was written for this initiative this past November, where we said we needed funds up to $5.845 million. So the bond would be up to $4.6 million. We wouldn't have to use it all. It doesn't require a vote, so we don't have to go to the residents for this. This is something that we can do as council, but we're required to, you know, to provide a right of referendum. So residents have, you know, from the day that if we were to say we want to go with this approach and we approved it as council, residents would have 45 days to provide their objection in writing, and it would take 10% of the 10% of the residents to basically object to the project to do a successful referendum to prevent us from doing this bond. And then the suggestion from both our bond attorney as well as our bond consultant was that essentially when you do this kind of capital improvement bond, you essentially want to go for the biggest number that you can politically, you know, get through, because you don't want to have to. You want to get all the money that you need for the projects. You don't want to have to keep coming back and trying to refund it or to refund other projects. And then lastly, the other thing that was suggested to us, this was from our bond attorney, was that this is something that we wanted, if we decide we want to go this route, this is something that we want to do roughly around the same time as we go through the process of securing the road bond for two main reasons. One, the process of the steps that we have to take and the work that we have to do to actually secure the bond money for the roads is going to take 3 to 4 weeks of time. The same is true for a capital improvement bond, but if they're done at the same time, all the same kinds of things need to be done. So it basically reduces dramatically the amount of work that needs to be done. And then the other more important point is they talked about the fact that it looks much better to the bond community if we're doing two major projects together as opposed to doing one now and one a little bit later. It gives the appearance of basically having our act together and being fiscally responsible and planning, and it helps sell the bonds, helps with the rates and so forth. And then, let's see, there was one other reason that they said. I don't have that. I don't know where it went, but yeah. So that's kind of where we are and what the committee has been, or what we've been looking at and researching, and what the committee talked about last week. I wanted to update you on it, get people's thoughts and opinions. You know, obviously we will make a formal recommendation, hopefully sometime soon, but that's the update.
Wow, quite a bit.
I have questions, but I think I need to kind of think it through. Is there any other questions or concerns?
Can't hear you, Kelly.
Are there any questions, concerns, feedback?
Hey, Bruce, quick question. I'm looking at the street map that was provided. Yep. Those red squares, do they represent? Because I don't see the key for that.
Yeah, so the red squares
are the squares around green streets.
Yep. Yep, so the red squares are the
Oh,
squares.
you're breaking
that-
up.
I'm breaking up?
Oh, you're fine. I think it's you, Ian.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm on a landline.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So the red boxes are the streets that we're proposing that are eligible for repair in the first season. And
Okay,
the colors are basically just illustrating what kind of construction each of those streets need. So the green is the simple rehabilitation, and then the blue and the orange are more of the full reconstruction methodologies.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of these things, you know, for example, the lead and the water meters, you know, those are things that, and the water mains. I mean, these are all things that are more near term. You know, fire hydrants and gate valves, and you know, those are things that we've been just completely ignoring for the last 100 years, and those are, you know, becoming an issue, fire safety and so forth, and water loss with gate valves. And
Well, we do have a couple of new fire hydrants around the city. So I know we had a program for that, and I think we were continuing on with that program. So are you saying that we've kind of missed that, or what are you saying?
Well, we've been proposing. We proposed. Hang on, let me get my notes. Yeah, so we were proposing, you know, to do fire hydrants and gate valves over the next 6 years. Before we were talking about this, so Scott's proposal was to do, you know, 20 fire hydrants, for example, per year at roughly about $100,000 per year, and 27 gate valves per year at $160,000 per year. But if we, you know, if we're going to do, you know, for the other work, you know, the water mains, the $1 million for lead, you know, the water meters, you know, getting the money up front for ditching, you know, all potential lead abatements, you know, it completely makes sense to do a capital improvement bond for these kinds of things. It completely then makes sense to throw those two in there with it because of the low interest rates that we have right now, and the fact that we could probably get it done cheaper if we're doing it much as a project than a slow burn kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It makes us look fiscally responsible and you know, a better light on us. So yeah, I agree with that.
So Bruce, a capital improvement bond doesn't have to be approved by resident vote?
Correct. So so we have to give them the right of referendum, and so I think we issue a notice of intent. I think is what it's called. Yeah, a notice of intent, and then they have the right of referendum for 45 days.
Okay.
And then after that, if there's no referendum, then it's up to council to approve the resolution. Yeah, it actually, it was, I don't know, were you still there, Salim, when they were talking about the capital?
No, I had to drop off, so I didn't listen to that part of it.
Yeah, but it was actually, you know, I was very pessimistic as we were going through, you know, looking at the total costs for all these things, but it was very pleasantly surprised, I guess, is the way to put it, when we looked at the numbers for the capital bond. I mean, it really, you know, between the money that we already have, you know, saved up in our water and sewer fund and the low interest rates relatively, you know, so to secure that kind of money, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's essentially an increase to residents of about $50 per year.
Plus, I would think there'd also be potential for us to generate more revenue as we fix that water loss problem as well. I'm thinking, right? Because we get a certain amount per whatever usage, right? And we should be able to build more of the usage, so we should be able to generate more revenue that way as well.
Yeah, It's actually a double positive because right now we're paying for that water that
Right.
we're buying essentially from Sakwa, but we're not billing out, and that's a lot
Right.
of water that we're paying for. And so one, we wouldn't be paying for a lot of that water anymore,
Right.
and we'd still be paying for it, but then we're
Yeah,
going to turn
but we'd
around
account for it.
and bill residents for it. So we're going to get the appropriate money for it. There'll be more water. I'm sorry, there'll be more essentially more money that we'll raise in the capital component than the $210,000 that we're talking about, because more money will be coming in on that.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we talked a little bit about, so we were proposing, this modest water increase rate in the capital component, and we were proposing it on the first 400 cubic feet. Now, one of the things we could look at is, depending on how all these numbers end up finalizing, if you guys wanted to get a larger capital bond to do more things, for example, or some of these numbers go up, we don't necessarily have to do it on the first 400 cubic feet. It could just be on the water bill. So that would actually dramatically increase the amount of money we pulled in. But I think we're, in terms of, the committee, we've been yelled at quite a bit over the last couple of years about trying to do things as equitable as possible. And so everybody has to use 400 cubic feet of water, regardless of whether they use water or not. So we thought that sounded fair. And, when we did the numbers, just basing it on the first 400 cubic feet, they weren't that bad. It's $50 a year.
Right.
So.
Right information.
Yeah, so I guess, Cheryl and Scott and I will be flushing some of these things, good term, flushing some of these things out, pun not intended, but appreciated. But we'll be flushing some of these things out in a little bit more detail, and then I guess our hope is to get a recommendation out, similar to what we did with roads and ditches, as soon as possible.
Okay. That was it?
That was it, yeah. You should have been there on Wednesday when we went for a little over 2.5 hours.
Nope, that's okay.
I guess, could you guys give me your thoughts on what you're thinking? I mean, does this seem appropriate? Does it seem too much? Does it seem too little? I mean, I guess your feedback would be helpful, at least in terms of, crafting a recommendation.
Well, see, I'm in a weird place where I know what needs to be done, but I just get concerned about cost to residents in this particular environment, the current environment where people have reached out to me to ask me if we're having food distributions because they need the boxes, and so just to put something else on their back, even though we may think that it's not a lot because we might be in a place where we're able to pay certain bills and things like that. It just concerns me about that. But I was basically kind of keeping it to myself. But now that you asked for feedback, you have it.
Yep.
But then that's also going to involve kicking not kicking the, well, I guess it is kicking the can down the road or something like, you have to get it done.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with Kelly. That's definitely a concern, but I still think it's so necessary, and some of it is like health related, related to the lead and stuff. So I think we just got to do it. I think we got to get on a plan to get everything rectified and updated as best we can. So I like that you're looking at it, and I like the committee's work so far.
Yeah.
Some of it's mandated, fortunately, but.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the plan, and yeah, we're at a point of no return. We've got an intersection here where we need to address the lead issue and at the same time address an aging infrastructure, both of which are not going to wait. And yeah, I totally understand Kelly's concerns. Yeah, I have the same concerns. We're just at, like I said, we're at the intersection where we've got to do something now. We cannot wait another year or 2 years until quote unquote things get better. We get a vaccine, whatever. You know what I mean? We're on the right track, I think.
I think so too, and I think that I think it's amazing that all of this fell in at the same time, so that the way that we approach it, we can use the funding or the approaches is across the board when you're dealing with fire hydrants from 1930 and water meters and um, it's just on our watch. And I thought about the 1930, whoever was in charge and in our position in 1930, and how they had to make some hard decisions. So, but I definitely thought about the increase for, because I think we mentioned two increases from the water issue. One is from the $37,000, right? That we're overspent, that we're actually spending because of the broken water meters. And then there was a $4 or $5 uh, potential increase, correct?
Well, to the residents, if we did this as proposed here to the residents, it would be an extra $4.30 a month.
But that's different than whatever the increase will come from the 37, or is it not?
Oh no, what I was saying there is I was just giving an example of that's how much water we're buying from SOCRA, but we're only billing out for 25,000 of that. So.
Yeah, like Ian said, a point of no return, lead, bad meters, bad streets, bad ditches. I mean, we have to do something. And but my heart is the same. Like Kelly said, people are hungry, and maybe that is it's just, we'll work it out. We'll work it out.
Yeah, I mean we'll talk about it more, but it helps just to get your feedback that somebody's saying, oh no, we shouldn't do this, or let's do that. Why don't we add this? That helps.
But yeah, for sure. What you're doing, Bruce, is you're giving full transparency as before, so people could, assess how they're going to get impacted. And I think this is a better way to do it. Let's just be as open as possible. I think we have been doing that, and we should just continue to do that.
And it doesn't mean that we're just getting the job done and we don't care how it impacts
right.
our citizens, right? We do care. So
right, exactly.
Very much.
Yep.
Okay, well, I appreciate letting me have all this time. So back to our regularly scheduled meeting, Kelly.
Okay, before we kick you out, Bruce, just our homework. Our homework for the next couple of days. You want us to do what? Look at the map and.
Yeah, so I just want you to look at the streets that are proposed. That for this coming construction season, and just see if it makes sense to you. I mean, if there's there may be some of you may have a huge objection over one street because of some issue. I don't know. I just wanted to give you guys a chance to kind of provide some feedback. I mean, the issue is that we've got to kind of get the design work going before the snow hits.
Right.
So I don't want to, make these decisions in a box. I mean, the committee has talked it through, and we've picked streets based on, those streets that, with the exception of Cambridge, those streets that really don't have a lot of ditching, because we need to, again, compact the design process for this first construction season. So I just kind of want to get your opinions. I don't want to, say, Scott, all right, go ahead and get the survey, and then a week later have somebody say, what the hell are we doing on Wiltshire or whatever? We shouldn't be doing that because of this. So I just wanted to give you guys a chance to review it. Again, we'll put it in a formal recommendation at some point, but just wanted you guys to review it to see if you had any input. I mean, more than likely, I'm guessing you're probably not going to have any input, but if you do, I want to hear it. So.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So when you say snow hit, Oh, okay, so we have a little time. I'm looking at the forecast. That's regular, relative, because it hit a couple of
No,
days ago, didn't it, or yesterday? So you're talking about accumulation of 2 or 3 inches.
right.
Okay.
What he's talking about is, we get some snow and then we get some more snow and it accumulates and they gotta,
Right.
it just makes the survey process very, very difficult.
Okay, well, we have about 9 minutes to switch over to our regular scheduled meeting. Was there any other council member comments for the study session? Was there any public comment? I don't think we have anybody else that's in here, right?
I had a question for
There's
Scott.
nobody else in here.
What did you say, Kelda?
No, there's nobody else in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question for Scott. Does the email that we got about Gorby and the other officers, that's basically just saying that they rejected the settlement and we're moving forward?
Correct. I think we're gonna get an update. Were we gonna get an update, Cheryl, tonight or no?
You're on mute, Cheryl.
We were supposed to set a closed sessions for that and I forgot.
Okay. So a real quick update, I guess procedurally, the parties went through a process known as case evaluation. It's a non-binding recommendation for settlement. So what happens is each side submits their theory of the case to a panel of 3 evaluators. The 3 evaluators ask questions and then spit back a number and say, this is what we think the case is worth. So the parties have the ability to accept that or reject it or not respond at all. If they accept it, it becomes a binding resolution. The case is resolved. If they reject it, then the case moves forward, continues on moving forward. And with this, 2 of the defendants, Gorby and Rucker, rejected the case evaluation themselves. Targabian accepted it, but the city's insurance carrier rejected it for all 3 of them. So again, it's a kind of a waste of time, especially in a case like this. But there was no resolution via case evaluation, so it moves forward. And the next step, my understanding is that our attorneys are going to be filing what's called a motion for summary disposition, asking the court to dismiss the case because there is no merit to the claim. So that's essentially where we're at right now.
Thank you. And so then we need to have that closed meeting at the next session, or we don't have to worry about it since that was already brought up.
The only thing I would say that the only value that would be gained from a closed session would be to discuss the actual dollar amounts. At this point, I don't know if it's necessary because the ship has already sailed. And ultimately, it's going to be the city's insurance carrier that makes the decision as to whether or not they're going to accept or reject any sort of settlement offer. So at this point, I would say it's really not necessary for council unless they wanted to have an update on that. Cheryl and I did have a conversation with the carrier's attorney that's handling it, and she'd be willing to discuss it with council, just kind of give her feedback of what she feels is going on with the case. But I would say it's not urgent.
Okay.
Unless council's interested.
Okay.
And any update? I guess it's Scott and Susie with JMC Properties.
Short update is there is no update. So we met and discussed it on Friday, and we're moving forward with our position on how we're going to continue to try and achieve compliance with these properties.
Hey, Scott, any updates on fine art and jewelry?
I don't know that there's any outstanding issues with them.
Illegal website. I thought we were going to confirm that it was down.
It wasn't as of our last meeting.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, I'm not so much worried about what he puts on the website versus if he's still conducting business at that location.
Yeah, that was the concern. So, is that still a valid concern?
I haven't heard any indication that there has been any business activity there. So I guess we've got other businesses that are conducting illegal activity that we've been focusing our attentions on. So
Right.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going on with that property, if anything.
We have this update, Cheryl, to put those on our next study sessions to have, even if there are no updates, so here or any updates if there are any.
Okay.
So also I wanted to say that I think people are getting emails from me. If you get emails from me or from anybody, I guess look at the email address to see who it's from. Because I guess it's going around. I don't know if all of us have received something from someone that is requesting something from me, I guess. A gift card to buy, I forgot, more than one of you all have let me know. So I think I told you, Cheryl, but when I saw the email addresses, really, I don't think there's anything that we can do because it's not my email address, if that makes sense. Right? And also, I would apologize, but it's really nothing I can do about it, about the other emails that you were getting. The timelines are not accurate. Just to let you know, I'm not a Democratic operative that oversees the Michigan government. Just to let you know, let that be on the record. Yes, I did work for Dominion Voting Systems, but I left Dominion Voting Systems in November of 2019. They have to reprogram, as I think our clerk would tell you, they have to program the software for every election, every election cycle. So I have nothing to do with the 2020 election, but I do apologize that you all had to be bombarded and pulled into it because I'm sure you're being bombarded because I've taken down everything for people to contact me. So I apologize for that also. So it's always fun in Lathrup Village, isn't it? So yeah, I'm getting just to let you know, I'm getting calls from the Netherlands now, emails from the Netherlands and from Puerto Rico and from where else was it from? A lot of people angry, but a lot to do about nothing. So, welcome to my circle. So we have to pop up here and get on to the other meeting. I literally almost forgot we had another meeting and I signed us off and back, but we do have the actual meeting.
Hey, Kelly, just so you know, you've been breaking up a lot. So I don't know if you're using a different speaker or something, but
Thought it was me, but yeah, she has been.
I'm probably in the call. We're gonna have a full host of people running everything off my internet. So probably overloaded at this point.
Okay.
All right, I'll see you all in other meeting, chat room or whatever.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Goodbye.